Portions of the following episode were recorded after the coronavirus pandemic started, but before the murder of George Floyd and related protests. We know these events have had and will continue to have tremendous impact on our lives and our community, and of course, the work of artists. We assert that Black Lives Matter and will be working on content that deal with such topics. As always, we'd love to hear more about what you'd like to hear from us. Stay tuned for ways to reach out to us at the end of the show.
Welcome to the Relief Podcast from the Akron Art Museum. Comfort and joy for these uncertain times. I'm Seema Rao, Deputy Director and Chief Experience Officer.
And I'm Gina Thomas McGee, Curator of Education.
So today we're talking about abstract. Abstract is a word that gives us a lot of challenges at work. I think that some of the work that we get the most pushback on are abstract works. You teach in our galleries all the time. Which are some of the works that make people kind of scratch their heads?
I think for me, it's what I call, I don't know what the curators call it, but I call it the minimalist room. So that's work that is really focused on line, shape, color, texture, pattern, those kinds of things, where it's less about telling a story. So I agree with you. I think people have, not everyone, but some visitors have baggage associated with that, where they feel like they're being duped or tricked or feel like maybe it's just not speaking to them, which is totally understandable, right?
You know, the duped part is the part I've been thinking a lot about. Actually, I'm not thinking it's so much about a collection, but how many times we actually do get duped in the news. You know, this is a time, we're all at home right now, everyone's checking their phones, and I have definitely gotten duped by like memes and things like that, and it does feel bad. And you're right, I do think some of what's abstract is that it's you're like, what am I supposed to get?
Yeah, almost. Well, maybe like it's an inside joke or something, and if you feel left out of an inside joke, like that doesn't feel great. But I'm always telling people, like, I don't know, maybe you're overthinking it actually, rather than than underthinking it. You know, you're maybe putting too much pressure on yourself. Like, let's take a look at it for what it is. Like, what colors do we see? What lines do we see? What's happening? Like, is there a lot of brushstrokes? Are there very few? Like, let's just get into it, what we can see on the surface.
Yeah, you're right. It is like, it can just be what you're looking at. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, I've been sort of sitting, finally the weather's good. You invited me we were in a meeting and you were sitting outside, and I didn't even think about like going outside for meetings. And I mean, we of course social distancing, so you did it at your house and I was at my house on Zoom, but it made me think, oh, I'm going to do that. And so today when I was thinking about you and the podcast, I was outside and I let my eyes relax and look at the green in the trees. So like I wasn't actually looking at anything. And I realized that's sort of what abstract art is, right? It's just about letting relax and look at the colors sometimes. I mean, there's meaning behind it, but you don't have to know that.
Right. And the meaning can be derived from like your actual physical interaction with that thing, right? Like I think one of the artists in our collection, Julian Stanchek, talks about that, where it's, you know, it's all about the perception of it, you perceiving it as a person, like what's going on in your eyes, what's going on as you physically stand there. And like that's a really powerful experience in itself. Not all art is storytelling. Like a lot of it can be, but not all of it is telling you a story. You know, not all artists are autobiographical or speaking to social issues or speaking about history or even their current lives. You know, sometimes they're making artwork about something, one of the art elements, like line. Like, this is a painting about blue. This is a painting about, you know, straight lines. And that's perfectly valid too.
Actually, that's more direct. You know, hearing you say it, I've been thinking a lot about when we were, you know, preparing for this lesson, about the word abstracted. You know, that like there's abstract, but then we use it in, you know, he created an abstracted concept or whatever. And in some ways, there's something more direct about a painting about blue than a painting that pretends to be realistic. Because, of course, you know, even we have that wonderful chase that has a reflection of the artist in it.
Yes.
and it's lovely, but that's a trick. All those artists are tricking you. I mean, realism is tricking you sometimes more. The Estes is basically a trick of the eye. Trompe l'oeil. It's all a trick.
Yeah, have you all seen that? So that's the one where it's a grocery store and you're looking through a window into the shop. So you're getting like a reflection of the glass of the city outside, and then you're seeing the shop on the inside. And we would maybe categorize it as photorealistic, right? It looks like as real as a photo. But you're right, it's a trick. I mean, he's doing this with paint. He's not, building a shop and putting glass in front of it. All of it's sort of trickery. But I think you're right. There is a difference between something that is looking at something that's real or addressing something that's real and changing it or stylizing it and not trying to make it look real. And then there's this whole other category of stuff that is not supposed to look like anything, right? Which we would call, I guess, non-representational, if I'm putting like my traditional art teacher hat on.
Right. No, you're right. And the directness, we're sitting at home and there's been so much news. And to me, when you say like a painting about blue and not having to think about anything else, there's actually like a power in that. Overthinking it has become my biggest challenge. And if I can just sit and look at pretty blue, or if I can just look at line and focus on line, there is something about what, like actually Julian Stanchuk, that's kind of a great message for being in this moment. That maybe it doesn't have to be about all those extra stuff. Maybe you don't have to overachieve to make a realistic painting. Maybe you can just paint a piece of paper blue and enjoy that.
Absolutely. And I think also, giving yourself the freedom to just let the experience be what it is and not, I think we have talked before during these times about like these unwritten rules that you give to yourself, that we sort of self-impose. Like there's definitely things we have to do, right? Like we have to feed ourselves, we have to try to stay well, we have to be like respect other people. But there are some things that I'm forcing myself to do that are not real, that are just like self-imposed rules. So what I love about abstract work is that, you sort of giving yourself a sense of freedom. Instead of trying to figure something out, like letting yourself have an experience. And that sounds sort of like, whoa, like mystical and maybe a little, I don't know, over the top, but it's real. It's true.
Yeah, that's huge. Actually, the power to not be realistic, the power to just be and to not be anything, to not have any kind of requirements of making it real, it's huge. Actually, the thing I keep thinking about here is how much we actually are completely okay with abstraction when we don't feel like it's art. Looking at the clouds and coming up with a picture in it, when you're, I don't know, sometimes, have you ever done that thing? One of my favorite things when I was a kid to do was to sit under the Christmas tree and look up at the Christmas tree lights until your eyes blur.
Yes. We need to have a physician call into the podcast because I want to know if there's a term for that where you like blur your vision.
Yeah.
Like, you like stare too deeply at something, you can blur it. I'm always wondering if like the way that other people are doing that is the same way I'm doing it, which you can never know.
No, you can never know. It's just like color. If they're actually seeing the same blue that you're seeing, absolutely. But there's something so powerful about letting your brain do that.
Definitely.
And that's really what abstract art, in some ways, on some level, it is a letting your brain do a thing, letting your art do a thing, and being freed of being realistic and being allowed to go down a different path.
Definitely. Think about what we do on social media, too. Like, every time you add a filter, you're abstracting something. You can do that with a push of a button now. You're sort of abstracting it and taking it one step away from really representing exactly what the thing is. So yeah, all of you who are taking photos and adding filters, you're abstract artists. We all are. We can do it. The example we're using today is Alma Thomas, and it is, do I say this every time? This is embarrassing if I say it every time, but it's one of my favorite works in the collection. It makes sense that I would say that because we got to choose which works we were going to talk about, so it makes sense that a lot of them are our favorites. But this one is abstracted and it is connected to something real. The title is Pond Spring Awakening. And to sit in front of it is such a joy. I selfishly work it into like almost every tour I do. It's amazing.
It is a beautiful work. Actually, it is. I'm newer to the collection. You know it so well. And I have to say I walked by it so many times and people would say go to Pond or else to the Alma Thomas, and I knew which was the Alma Thomas, but I didn't know which one was called Pond. And it's what I love about it is once you say pond and you look at it, you think, oh, I see that. And it is actually that kind of thing where I've seen this on Instagram sometimes where people take really close up pictures of nature and it becomes an abstract image. But it's also really just, it's almost like what you were talking about, a painting about blue. It's actually multiple colors, but it is in some ways just a reverie on color. And it's lovely. It's lovely. I just saw it the other day.
It's so nice to sit in a group setting in front of it too, because once you give people that little, I usually talk to people about it first before I sort of reveal the title. And once you give somebody that little nugget of what it might represent or what the sort of thought behind the work was, what inspired the colors, they get all of these like sensory experiences and like personal stories that they want to share about, like, you know, their aunt has a pond and they went swimming there as a kid, or you know, it's so interesting the connections that people can have, and you might not think of that looking at it at first glance, right? Because it is so abstracted. It's such a happy, beautiful piece. And also I love it selfishly because Alma Thomas was an art teacher. So shout out to my art teachers in the world. And she made this work and many others actually after she retired, which is amazing. And then became the first African-American woman to have a solo show at the Whitney, which is just like, I mean, retirement goals, seriously.
Wow. We could talk about productivity in a future episode.
Truly.
That's an impressive career. So we'll turn it over to Reggie to talk a little bit more about the artwork.
Reggie here with this week's Deep Dive. In this episode, we're talking about Alma Thomas's Pond Spring Awakening. Although the title describes a very specific scene, Thomas has presented viewers with a completely abstract image. Certainly the colors and shapes are evocative of a pond. I've even heard students swear they see fish swimming in there. But this isn't a typical image of a pond that, say, Claude Monet or Andy Warhol might have given us. For some people, that can be off-putting and frustrating. Why didn't she just paint the thing? Someone might ask. Or other people might cry out, but what is it supposed to be? Or what is it supposed to mean? All great questions that every abstract artist has ever asked themselves. Alma Thomas's answer was pretty simple. Thomas often spent time sitting by her window, observing as the sunlight faded in and out through tree branches and leaves. In her work, she wanted to try and capture that sensation, and with it, the true essence of the natural world. To do that, she stripped nature down to its most basic parts, color and light. She said, "Light reveals to us the spirit and living soul of the world through colors." You can really feel that swell of color and light in this work. It's almost as if we're looking at a rippling surface with light bouncing up and down off the little waves. Or maybe we're looking at a reflection of light passing through old, gnarled pond trees and sweet little cattails. My favorite thing about abstract art is that the viewer gets to decide what they're seeing. You can decide to just see the colors, shapes, and lines, or a mossy little pond. Or you might choose to not try so hard to see and just let Thomas's abstraction wash over you like a rustling breeze through the trees. As for me, I'm going to shake off a little of this pond water, but I'll see you back here next time for another deep dive.
Thanks, Reggie. That was a great segment about abstraction. Abstraction is exactly how you say it, something that has sort of a freedom and flexibility of thought. It can be whatever you need it to be. It's not something that's representational, so you can make a lot of choices. There's something kind of empowering about that. I also have to say, I have thought, whenever I think of improvisation, I often think about jazz. Caitlin is going to bring us a segment with Theron Brown, who's one of the foremost jazz performers in Akron. And it really does talk a little bit about how abstraction isn't just something that you see in visual art. It's also in music.
Hi, Caitlin here. I spoke with Theron Brown for this episode's Shop Talk. Theron is an Akron legend as far as contemporary jazz in our city is concerned. He's the founder of Rubber City Jazz and Blues Festival in Akron, the Theron Brown Trio, and he also teaches jazz piano at Kent State University. Theron has graced his presence at the museum many times throughout the years. You might have seen him at last year's Downtown at Dusk. He'll be with us again virtually this coming February for our Midwinter Blues and Other Tunes concert series. And without further ado, Theron Brown's Shop Talk. Theron, welcome. Thanks for setting aside some time today to talk with me on Shop Talk.
Good to be here.
So I sent you along some questions. I hope you got to look at them. And this episode of the podcast focuses on Alma Thomas's Pond, Spring Awakening. And I'm just curious what your initial thoughts were on the work when you first saw it, or even on Alma Thomas, if you know much about her.
Yeah, no, I actually had a good time reading about her and looking her up because I've been super into history as well as Black history with all the craziness going on lately. So this was a lot of fun to dive into her story and see what she was all about. You know, I usually like to look at art first without the title of things, just as, I guess, for my own self to try to guess what I get out of it without any influences, you know. But in this case, you know, even though I knew the title of it, looking at it, you could get a glimpse of it. There's this darkness, and then you have little speckles of these colors that are popping through. And to me, that always shows a sign of going towards a rebirth, or, you know, renewing. It's going to be okay at the end. So when I saw that, it hit me in that way, and instantly the title made sense with spring and kind of like the winter dissolving in this beautiful rebloom. You know, the rebirth of spring. It's cool.
Yeah, because it's, especially with abstracted works, which I'll ask about abstract in a second. Yeah, there's so much interpretation up for grabs, and I love that you were able to look at her history too, because I was just looking it up and seeing that connection between her wanting to be an educator and teaching at that high school until she retired, and now just talking to you about your teaching experiences. I love that connection.
And it was cool. I think one of the, you know, I'm going to paraphrase this, but one of her quotes was that she wished that she was more well known for the work that she did educating kids than her actual art, which I definitely relate to that. You know, being an educator and you see the kids, it's like, oh yeah, they have a chance to fix what we're in now.
Right.
And, you know, so I could definitely relate to her in that. And yes, it seemed like she lived a beautiful, very important life.
So very much in the vein of Thomas's work, and I'd say of some of your work as a musician with improv. What does abstract mean to you?
Yeah, I have to say I had to grow into this. Actually, when I first moved here when I was 18, Akron, Ohio. Before that, I had only played in church. My definition of abstract, I didn't really know what it was. I thought I could just play anything or something as it relates to music. But I think as I grew, I was able to understand that it's a lot more personal, that everything is really abstract. What isn't abstract, you know?
Right.
They're all just titles and names, you know, it's the order of things. And I think abstract art, there's still that grasp because you can make the human connection to it. You can form an opinion to it. So that for me is freeing. That's what I think of abstract art is. It's even more free than anything because it is allowing the door for people to make their opinion on something that you hold so dear to you. And they can say they like it or they can say they don't like it. And that's okay, because there's going to be something that you don't like about me or something you like about me. So it's the same with art. That's kind of my take on it.
I enjoy what you were saying, this idea of vulnerability. Yeah, you hold something so dearly when you make it and craft it, and you spend so much time, and then to be okay with what people interpret it as. And like you said, with not knowing what abstract meant to you, just that sign of growth is so important.
Take some courage too, I guess.
Right, definitely. And now I love talking about all this stuff, but I'm going to switch to some more short answer, more lighthearted questions, if that sounds good. Okay.
Sure.
So what is the first thing you do in the morning?
Lately it's been waking up to my son getting up, so I change a diaper.
Oh.
Yeah. That's been since I can't even remember the last time I haven't done that. So
yeah, because you have two, right?
I do. I have a son, and his name's Theron Jr. He's 2 years old.
That's right.
And my daughter is Tegan, and she's 7 months old.
So yeah, there wasn't much like time to spare.
No.
Between the diapers and.
Let's get up and get right to work.
It's funny because the other artists I've talked to so far, a couple of them said the first thing they do is take their dog outside. So it's very much these ideas of not even for yourself is the first thing in the morning.
Yeah, you gotta get to work.
Yeah.
Somebody needs you.
Exactly. And then what are your 3 desert island studio needs?
Studio needs. Oh my gosh. I love a new keyboard. That's always fun.
Any specific brand?
Sure.
Or?
I love Nord.
Okay.
Nord, those are good. I think they come in 88 keys if anybody's out there wants to make a donation.
Whoa, yeah, we should set up a PayPal link.
Right.
Show notes.
Yeah. No, but that keyboards are always fun. Microphones would be cool. And then how about an upright bass?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I have a drum set, so that would be perfect. The trio could just
that would be awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like these desert island needs are like wish list and also like can't live without.
At this point, yeah. Because studio time is like not really existing right now.
Right. Do you have a space in your house for like the drum set? Like, can you play? Like, and it not be very loud?
No.
That's how it is here.
Yeah.
You just
my
hear
son.
It.
Yeah. And my son. So we just have it upstairs because he loves to. I kind of have all the instruments upstairs so they can just go in on
I
them.
love that. Yeah. I love seeing like infants playing drums and they just have better beat recognition than I do.
Yeah.
And I just admire it so much. So I'm sure your kids are going to be like superstars by the time they're 7 even.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really advanced. That you want to talk about abstract art.
Come over
here and listen to that.
Oh, I love that. So out of all your studio needs, what's your favorite tool?
Yeah. I'm going to go technology right now because I've been getting a ton of information from YouTube. And I think that is like YouTube and Google. You know, you can find anything, any music I need, any questions about Logic, which is a recording thing on your computer, DAW. Yeah, just think Zoom calls, how to hook up your mic to So that's been my source for everything. I mean, as far as education, I think with us being at home, there's no excuse anymore, So I think that's been my biggest tool for even teaching and
I love that. Yeah, I feel like just you don't even need those giant like pamphlets or like books of how to use. You can just be like, I'm going to toss this or recycle it and I'm going to Google my needs when it comes to it because who wants to lug around that stuff forever?
Right. Perfect example. My wife got my son a trampoline. I get on YouTube, look up the brand, and there's somebody that already put it together.
That's incredible. Such like ease of access. No dad's like fumbling in the backyard anymore, like getting frustrated and sweaty.
It's all good.
So next question I have, what's your silver lining during these times?
Yeah, it's actually my family. I will say that I've had a lot of ups and downs, and they've been dramatic with COVID and a lot of other things going on, Black Lives Matter, and just a change of life, complete 180 from going to having a full summer schedule to absolutely nothing, but having, my wife at home and being able to play with the kids. I couldn't believe if I would have missed that during this time. That would have been terrible, So there are some ups to it, and that has been it. The other thing is I found some comfort in writing music, getting ready for my next album, and being able to take my time in that.
Right.
So I think that's been keeping me together.
So an overall sense of kind of slowing down and taking these opportunities that we didn't necessarily choose. So now I have a pretty brief, quick answer, this or that questions.
Okay.
That I didn't send to you on purpose.
Oh, gosh.
Ready? Old or new?
New.
You didn't seem certain.
Yeah. Oh, that was tough. Actually, I'm going to have to switch my answer. Probably. Let's stick with new. That's
new?
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Half full or half empty?
Oh, half full.
I always like that response.
Yeah.
Morning or night?
Night.
Yeah?
Definitely. definitely.
Kids in bed or when kids are still up?
Kids in bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in the morning you're waking up to their diapers.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. Exactly.
Fast or slow?
Probably fast. Yeah, I'm used to moving quick. At this point, it's everything's slow, but.
And then the last major question: salty or sweet?
Boy, oh boy, sweet.
Sweet.
Yeah, definitely sweet tooth. But I
Do you
like salt.
No, it's the trick question. That's why we save it for last.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite sweet?
I'm really into fruit bars, the popsicles. Kids, they're just here, and yeah, I probably shouldn't eat as many as I do.
I mean, it's been 90 degrees out for a couple weeks now, so I think we all deserve endless popsicles.
Yeah.
Keep our
absolutely.
sanity.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, if you don't mind just giving a plug of any upcoming projects you have. You mentioned your new album coming out soon.
Yeah, well, right now, Rubber City Jazz and Blues Fest is coming up, so I'm planning that for August 27th through 29th. And then I'm getting ready to do a pretty cool teaching experience in London, but from my house for Piano Week with Pianist Magazine. So I'll be doing some teaching and then like a 50-minute concert or something.
Oh, wow.
I believe it'll be on YouTube. Oh, I don't know the date, sometime in July. And then, yeah, I'm working on my new album called Spirit Fruit. It's based off of scripture in the Bible, the fruit of spirit. And I think it's just a lot of things that we need in this world. And hopefully it'll be able to shine that light here in a few months.
Definitely. Oh, well, thank you so much, Theron. This was such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, excellent. So we are so happy to be doing this and reaching out to you. If you want to reach back out to us, please do give us a call. Phone number is 330-790-1622 or throw us an email at podcast@akronartmuseum.org. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Relief Podcast from the Akron Art Museum. Comfort and joy for these uncertain times.
Relief Podcast is a production of the Akron Art Museum. Today, you heard from staff members Seema Rao, Gina Thomas-McGee, Reggie Lynch, and Caitlin Evans, along with special guest Theron Brown. Special thank you to Jordan King, who wrote and performed all the podcast theme music. Until next time, take care and live creative.